Summary of Aliens, Bishop written by T.R. Napper. Chapter 1. In the dimly lit hangar of the USCSS Il Conde, Captain Marcel Apone strode onto the deck, a commanding figure with hands behind his back. The unruly atmosphere among the colonial marines came to an abrupt halt. The playful banter, shoulder slaps, and ball-breaking ceased as the soldiers instinctively stood at attention. The setting was industrial, with gleaming steel walls, yellow-painted ladders, and the scent of grease lingering in the air. Iron-gray shipping containers and missiles added to the utilitarian ambience. Carey, an outsider to the camaraderie, stood to the side, observing the Marines. They had gathered in the hangar after weeks of hypersleep, their muscled and young bodies glistening with sweat from intense workouts. The Marines were mean, ready for action, and seeking an endorphin high to shake off the lethargy of extended stillness. This colonial Marines company, known as the Hard-Boiled, appeared meager in strength. As Carey surveyed the group, it seemed they barely reached platoon strength. The reasons for their diminished numbers remained unclear to her, but there was an air of both mystery and tension surrounding the unit. Carey, uncertain of her place, stood apart from the others. She felt the curious glances of a few Marines but understood that their indifference was typical until one either messed up or proved themselves. Her fire team partner, Corporal Sarah Ransom, had given her a valuable piece of advice: they're waiting for you to screw up, or to do something right. If it's the former, they'll make your life hell until you request a transfer. If it's the latter, they'll bleed for you. Simple as that. The solemnity of the moment intensified as Captain Apone addressed the assembled Marines. The Putna, a research vessel, had been found. Science Officer Lance Bishop's last known location was aboard the drifting ship in space. Apone's words hung in the air, conveying the weight of the impending mission. The captain painted a vivid picture of the xenomorph threat. Marines exchanged glances, some clenching fists in silent determination. Apone's firm voice delivered the news that the ship's life support was functional. But all other systems were down. The gravity of the situation settled among the soldiers. Over the past 2 months, the Marines had received information packets about LV-426, Hadley's Hope, and Fiorina 161. Apone urged them to reacquaint themselves with the details, emphasizing the importance of knowledge. The mention of Bravo Team's fate on Hadley's Hope lingered, the unspoken acknowledgement of lost comrades echoing in the silence. The face-hugger. The chest-burster. The xenomorph. The queen. The acid blood. The terrifying speed. The armored mesoskeleton. Apone listed the horrors the Marines were up against. Despite the seemingly fantastical nature of these creatures, Apone assured them that these monsters were real. Sergeant Hetrick, the synthetic Haruki, and Weyland-Yutani Representative Walter Schwartz took up positions behind the captain. A sense of unease pervaded the hangar as Apone's gaze swept over the assembled Marines. His brother had been among the fallen on Hadley's Hope, a fact hanging unspoken but palpable. Apone invoked Sun Tzu's wisdom from The Art of War, emphasizing the importance of understanding the enemy. Sergeant Hetrick took the stage, detailing the equipment modifications to combat the xenomorph threat. The Marines would wear ballistic masks, equipped with quick-release latches. The atmosphere thickened with tension as the sergeant explained the imminent danger of xenomorph blood and the need for quick reactions. The focus shifted to the synthetic Haruki, who had been silently observing. The presence of Weyland-Yutani Representative Schwartz added an element of distrust and secrecy. The mission demanded unity, yet division seemed to lurk beneath the surface. The company broke into a brief respite as Apone announced the discovery of the USCSS Putna. The Marines had 3 hours to prepare for the mission. The urgency of the situation became palpable as boots echoed on the steel mesh floor. Apone's gaze lingered on Carey, adding a personal touch to the weight of the impending mission. As the Marines dispersed to prepare, the narrative delved into Carey's internal struggle. Her past experiences, marked by poverty, hunger, and training in the dojang, shaped her skepticism. The mention of synths and the enigmatic Schwartz added an additional layer of complexity to the unfolding mission. Sergeant Hetrick's continued briefing detailed the mission plan, from magnetic boots to breathing apparatus. The gravity of potential atmospheric leakage due to acid blood added a layer of complexity to the already perilous mission. The Marines, burdened by the weight of their impending encounter with the xenomorphs, left the hangar with a mix of determination and trepidation. The tension, uncertainty, and the looming threat of the xenomorphs hung in the air as the Marines prepared for their mission to rescue a potential survivor on the drifting USCSS Putna. The reader is left with a vivid portrayal of the characters' internal struggles and the collective anticipation of a perilous journey into the unknown. Chapter 2. In the bustling mess hall of the spacecraft, the clatter of trays and the hum of conversation filled the air. For Private Carrie Lee, mealtime was a cherished respite, a reminder of the privileges she now enjoyed as a member of the Colonial Marines. Her eyes scanned the long white mess table, where fellow Marines grumbled about the usual grievances, the quality of the food, the nature of their mission, and the inadequacy of their pay. But for Carrie, everything was a luxury. The crisp, new, tough-fibered uniform that adorned her frame, the comfort of her bunk, the nearby basketball court on the next deck, and the steady credits flowing into her account week after week, which she dutifully transferred to her mother. Most of all, the food was a source of abundance and nourishment, a stark departure from the struggles of her past where a hunk of stale bread might be obtained only through a hard-fought barter. As she demolished a plate of scrambled eggs with gusto, the murmurs around her buzzed with discontent. The other Marines complained about the eggs not being real, but to Carrie, they tasted real enough. She savored her coffee, appreciating the simple act of slurping from a cup held in her offhand, yet another luxury. The mess hall was a sanctuary, a place where no one demanded anything of her in exchange for sustenance. Across the table, Corporal Ransom observed Carrie's appetite with a raised eyebrow. "Hungry?" she asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and amusement. Carrie, taking the offered salt and generously sprinkling it over her eggs, responded, "Was a time I couldn't be sure if I'd see another meal." Ransom nodded, a silent acknowledgement of shared experiences that transcended words. The corporal, however, couldn't fully comprehend Carrie's past unless she had lived through it herself. Yet, there was a subtle understanding, a recognition of a shared journey within the Corps. Carrie's attention shifted beyond Ransom to the two long empty white tables nearby. The absence of fellow Marines was conspicuous, and she couldn't help but inquire, "Where's the rest of the unit?" Ransom motioned with her fork, indicating a direction. "We lost them at Torin Prime." "Oh," Carrie said, the name triggering a vague familiarity. "In combat?" Ransom shook her head. "To bureaucracy." The revelation hung in the air, and Carrie waited for Ransom to elaborate. The corporal leaned forward, as if to share a secret. "Word is, the Union of Progressive Peoples have been funding rebels there. Command told Apone they wanted the Il Conde stationed in orbit as a deterrent until it settled down. Apone said no. Said he had a mission. A rescue mission. No man left behind. Pulled some strings. Our captain has a lot of friends in high places. Lot of enemies, as well." Carrie's gaze shifted to the table where Captain Apone sat with the synthetic Haruki, the dropship pilot Miller, and one other, Walter Schwartz, the company man. "Word is, he did a deal," Ransom continued. "A dropship, a good lieutenant, and a full platoon, down to the surface, as a deterrent. In exchange, Apone got to continue his mission." "That's the word, huh?" Carrie mused, detecting a subtle undertone in Ransom's speech, a hint of resentment or skepticism, perhaps. However, the context was insufficient to unravel its nuances. "Still," Carrie said, returning to the immediate reality of their depleted unit, even adding a full platoon, this is a little slim for a company. Ransom lowered her fork, her expression conveying a hint of impatience. "Rookie," she said, "the colonial marines are always undermanned, stretched too thin, asked too much. We've got a whole galaxy to cover, run by an empire whose ambitions don't meet its resourcing." Carrie was taken aback by the candid admission but nodded in understanding. She was no stranger to the demanding nature of their service. To make up the shortfall, she added, "They keep turning to Weyland-Yutani." "Yup," Ransom affirmed, as if acknowledging the inevitable. The corporal shrugged, as if Carrie had merely stated the obvious, and returned to her food. The conversation shifted to the perennial struggles of the colonial marines, a constant battle against both external threats and internal resource constraints. The meal progressed, and a square steel tray passed down the table, filled with cornbread. Only a few marines grabbed a chunk, but Carrie seized half of what remained and deposited it onto her plate. The American bread, with its light, grainy texture and a hint of sweetness, transported her momentarily. She closed her eyes, swallowed, and reached for a second slice. As she prepared to indulge in the simple pleasure of eating, a disruptive voice pierced the chatter. "Look at the English bitch eat." It was Cortázar, a marine seated farther down the table. The others, including Corporal Colby, Hetrick, and Johnson, joined in the mockery, grinning as they focused their attention on Carrie. "Swallowed a damn slice whole," Cortázar continued, his tone dripping with disdain. The camaraderie that Carrie had felt unnoticed for the first few weeks shattered in an instant. The sidelong glances and muttering evolved into overt scrutiny. Some Marines inquired about her origin and combat experience, and now, all eyes were on her. "Nowhere," she replied, and, "None." Lies, both. The weight of the attention intensified as the derogatory comments persisted. "That right, rookie?" Cortázar sneered, eyeballing her. "I think we'll call you cornbread now." Carrie, refusing to succumb to the humiliation, stepped on her shame and shot back, "Australian." "I'm Australian, not English." "Don't take a tone with me, rookie," Cortázar retorted. "What, you don't like being called English?" "Would you?" she snapped. The exchange escalated into a vulgar proposition from Cortázar, met with a sharp retort from Carrie. The tension in the mess hall reached its peak as the verbal sparring threatened to spill into physical confrontation. However, Carrie, driven by a surge of adrenaline, was quicker. In a swift movement, she closed the distance between herself and Cortázar, pressing a tray against his throat while gripping the back of his head. "Shit," someone muttered. "She's fast." Cortázar, a towering figure with broad shoulders, struggled against Carrie's unexpected assertiveness. The metal tray pressed into his throat, rendering his size ineffective. The mess hall erupted into chaos, with other Marines yelling and reacting to the confrontation. Amidst the pandemonium, Captain Apone's commanding voice cut through the commotion. "Stand down, Marines." The captain, a formidable presence among his troops, approached the scene. "Sit down," he ordered, his tone brooking no defiance. Apone, physically imposing and equal in stature to Cortázar, had an innate authority that demanded respect. The Marines complied, except for Cortázar, who stood with heaving chest and wild eyes, still fixated. Chapter 2. Mealtime aboard the spacecraft was a coveted sanctuary for Carrie, a respite from the rigors of military life. As the mess hall buzzed with the clatter of trays and the low hum of discontented murmurs from her fellow Marines, she reveled in the simple pleasures that came with being part of the Corps. Dressed in her clean, new uniform made from tough-fibered fabric, Carrie felt a sense of luxury that contrasted sharply with her past. Her bunk offered comfort, the adjacent basketball court provided recreation, and the credits steadily flowing into her account were a lifeline she could extend to her mother. But above all, it was the abundant and nutritious food that stood out as a beacon of solace in her daily routine. Seated at the long white mess table, Carrie observed the familiar grumblings of her comrades, complaints about the quality of the food, the nature of their missions. and the perennial discontent with pay. To her, though, everything seemed like a privy.